It is a pleasure to be home. It is a pleasure to be on the spiritual path, and the journey takes on so many different metaphors and so many beautiful meanings as we're on it. So this weekend we're talking about Easter and Passover, and the name of this talk is Stepping into the Light, which in both cases is exactly what we do. Now, it's interesting because the story of Easter is the one I was raised with, and there's a whole bunch of different versions of it. So depending on which of the Gospels you read, either Jesus came out of his cave, that makes him sound like a bear in the spring, but he came out of his tomb and met with the male apostles, or met with Peter, also known as Cephas or Cephas. It could be that he was first approached, or his tomb was first approached by the women who were going there to care for the body. Specifically, it's believed that Mary the Magdalene, who some people might say is his wife, and some people just don't really talk about her that much. There's just so many different versions of the story about what happened on what we now call Easter morning. They wouldn't have called it Easter morning. Easter is the name of a pagan goddess who is all about fertility, and that's how we get Easter eggs and stuff. Anyway, there's also a version of the Quran which talks about how the followers of Jesus stole his body and went and hid it. There's a story that floated around in the Roman barracks that there's this weird cult that had stolen the body of their leader and were eating it. It's another version of how we talk about communion. This is my body, this is my blood. There was a teacher back in ministerial school who talked about how a story, the historical fact, can be factually incorrect and yet deeply true. And so what I know is that something happened Easter morning. Something happened that changed the minds of a group of followers who had completely said, oh, I don't even know the guy. I don't know what you're talking about. Had gone and hidden. Were locked into a room out of fear. And something changed on Easter. It didn't change at the crucifixion. That was when everybody disappeared. That's when Jesus's posse just took a hike. But on Easter morning, in that moment of coming back into the light, when the Christ in his spiritual body stepped into the light and away from death, that was when something world-changing happened, because that was the moment that began this movement that eventually became what we now call Christianity, which is one of the primary religions within Western culture. It's something happened, and we know it was important because it had such a huge effect on the rest of life. What we believe as religious scientists is what Ernest Holmes wrote on our textbook on page 377, that Jesus revealed himself to his followers after his resurrection to show them that death is but a passing to a higher sphere of life and action. Death is not what we thought it was, and that's whether it's the death of an idea, the death of an era, the death of an experience, the death of a relationship, or a physical death. It's not what we thought it was. It is stepping into a whole nother state of being. It's a different way of talking. It's a different way of being in the world. One of the things that happened when Jesus came out of the tomb is one of the versions of the story anyway, in, I think it was in John. It talks about how Mary the Magdalene was there and saw him and thought he was the gardener, because she didn't even recognize this man. And when it had been revealed to her who he was, he said, don't come near me yet. He said, I have not yet ascended, whatever that means. But she said, go tell the rest of the guys that I am in the midst of my ascension. It's an interesting story. He was still in his transformation. He was still cooking, as it were. So the thing to remember is that on Easter, it's a celebration of the process of stepping into the light. When I think of it, I kind of imagine that this being who is in a new body that may or may not feel all that comfortable yet, who is stepping into a new world, a new way of seeing the world, I imagine Jesus kind of coming out of the tomb and having to blink against the light. That the world is so bright and there's so much to take in that if you've ever done that, you walk out of a dark room into the summer sunlight, your eyes kind of stream and it's hard to see and you might need a minute and it might be a little disconcerting and it might throw off your balance. And that's okay. That's normal and natural. And what that really is your body doing what it knows to do, the wisdom of your body at work, creating a new balance, creating a new relationship with the world around you. The story of Passover is essentially, in my mind, a very similar story. This is the story of people who had done really well in Egypt over the course of 200 years since they had been taken in during to save them from a plague. Over 200 years, they actually, I think it was more than 200, they had done really well down in Egypt to the point where the Egyptians were thinking, yeah, I don't know about this anymore. They're kind of taken over. And so these wonderful people ended up enslaved. And rather than staying in slavery, their consciousness was such that they called Moses to them and he led them out. There's a whole series of miracles that happens. If you're interested, read Exodus or read the Torah. And that process of changing, we think that, the story ends at either Jesus stepping out of the tomb and becoming ascended, or it ends, once you get past the Red Sea, it's all good to go. There's no one chasing you. Everything's all light and shiny and bright. But we forget that in the desert where that light was so bright, and when the Jews stepped into that light, there was an adjustment period. They wandered for 40 years. They had to figure out how to be fed. They had to figure out where they were going. They had to figure out new relationships with each other. And they wandered for a full generation trying to learn the difference between a slave mind and a free mind. Now, they had a lot of help. But what they had to do took time and work, and even, I would suggest, a little bit of upset on the part of the group at times. The part we forget was that Moses was not allowed into that land of milk and honey. He never made it to that promised land because he was there in order to lead them into their freedom, to help them get there. He wasn't there for himself. He was there as a servant leader. Jesus did not hang out to see his church, go platinum or really take off. He was there to teach and then allow the student to become the master. He even said to his apostles, everything I have done, you will do and more. But then he didn't hang around and take credit for it. He let them get on with it. And so this is a way of being in the world that we're looking at, that we're growing into now, that our center gets to reenact. We are stepping out of the cave of our quarantine lifestyles into a world that looks similar but isn't exactly the same. There's a lot that's very similar. The building's still there. The parking lot looks different. The leadership looks different. The parts of the building that we go into at this moment will look different, and even some of the faces are different. You've never seen me in a hat before. What we are learning is that there is a difference between the spiritual self and the world that lives in and how that world is seen, and the physical world, the level of effect that we have been used to. In our foundations class, there's a time when we do a meditation, and I read something over and over again. I'm only going to read it to you once or twice here, but I ask you to just contemplate this. Because the quotation from Ernest Holmes says, looking at things from the belief that they are separate from the divine presence is like looking through dark glasses. While viewing all things as acts and manifestation of the divine presence is to view them as they really are and have them given back to us as though God himself had personally brought them to us. Are we still living pre-crucifixion in the world of things as they appear, the level of effect? Or are we living post-Easter, post-freedom from Egypt, in a world where we see things, time and space, differently, where the physics themselves are different, where our physical body is different because we're really living in our spiritual body and we can make it appear or not appear. And let me read that again so that you can really get that. Looking at things from the belief that they are separate from the divine presence is like looking through dark glasses, while viewing things as acts and manifestations of the divine presence is to view them as they really are and have them given back to us as though God himself had personally brought them to us. Now, what's true about that? The truth is that we are living part of our what we call the what we believe or the principle statement, the declaration of principles of the science of mind. And one of the lines is, we believe in the unity of all life, physical and spiritual. We believe in the unity of all life and that the highest God and the innermost God is one God. God was fully present in Jesus and in Moses. And then God was fully present in their followers who took the next step forward. God is fully present in you as you are right now. And this is the difference of Easter. I understand it through Christian terms because I was raised Christian. When Jesus was in form, pre-crucifixion, when he was living in his physical body and the Christ was within him and he and the Father were one, but he was living in a physical body at the level of what we call the level of effect, the physical world. He kept saying things like, I stand at the door and knock. Let those who have ears, let him hear. Come and stand witness to these things. Let me teach you how to do them. When he rose from his belief in death, when he was resurrected, when he took on a spiritual body, he just appeared in a locked room to the apostles and said, I'm here. This is the teaching. He wasn't knocking at the door anymore. At the physical level, we are invited. At the spiritual level, that oneness, that recognition of the highest God and the innermost God, it is inevitable. It's not going to stop and wait for permission because it is giving itself permission, as each and every one of us, to be fully present in this world. And it might look to the rest of the world like something's gone a little weird with those weird religious scientists. But what's truly happening is that we choose to live from our spiritual truth. And the laws of physics themselves will change such that we are awake and aware as first cause instead of simply, victims of circumstance. Sometimes it's going to be fun change, and sometimes it's like the Jews in the desert. They're not too excited about this whole water from rocks and manna coming down, and it's only enough for one day. Richard Rohr, who is a Franciscan monk, wrote in The Universal Christ about Jesus, in speaking of Jesus. His parable of the reign of God are about finding, discovering, being surprised, experiencing reversals of expectations, changing roles and status. None of these notions are static. They are always about something new and good coming into being. Our own practitioner, Sue Scherer, would say, something good must come of this, or only good can come of this, some version of that. Something good comes of every crucifixion experience. Something good comes of every slavery experience when we allow ourselves to move forward from it and don't stay in it. And so my invitation to you this Easter, this Passover, is to be free, is to remember that the Christ within us is no longer standing at the door and knocking, is no longer going to leave a message, is no longer going to let us hit the snooze button on our spiritual awakening. The time is now. Now, my brothers and sisters, we are all the sons and daughters of the Most High. Now, we are Christed beings. Now, our Buddha nature is in full view of ourselves and everyone else. In this very moment, our call is to leave behind the tomb, to let go of what has been. And you know, there seems to be a syndrome going around in America right now where some people are having trouble leaving their quarantine lives. I will tell you very honestly, I have liked some parts of my quarantine life, and I'm not going to let go of it. There is a whole new world to live in. And so long as we choose it consciously, so long as we choose to live in the world consciously and take the best of what has been and the best of what has been more recently, and find a third thing, which is the best of the new way of living in a spiritual world, in a world where the physics of time and space are different now. So long as we do all of that consciously, we create a world that works for everyone, a world in which we live the idea that all life is one life, where we live, where our deepest truth and our most basic assumption is that the highest God and the innermost God are one God, that all of us are speakers of truth and revealers of truth and can show the divine being through each and every one of us as long as we allow it. There is a truth that wants to be spoken through each of us. There is a truth that wants to be spoken through you today. It is the truth of your magnificent soul. It is the truth of your Christed self, of your non-slave free self that has wandered in the desert long enough, that has learned to depend on the divine being, that makes sure you have food and water, that makes sure that all doors are open to you, even if they don't look all that open. In this moment, your Christed self wants to express. And in this moment, I invite you to allow it. I invite you to bow to the inevitable truth that thou art that you have arisen from the dead, the old ways of thinking that don't serve you. They might have served somebody. Maybe they still serve someone in your life who's not going to be happy about this change, but they don't serve you. And what it will do, if you will live from this Christed self, if you will live from your freed mind, it will inspire others. It will lift up your own experience so that you are living from your Christed self all the time, so that you are the ascended one. You are the one who has found nirvana or oneness, or however you want to say it. All the religions pretty much say the same thing. We're all learning who we are. And it all these paths end in the same place, in that realm of oneness that is beyond words. It is who we are. It is our divine birthright. It is what I know in this moment. It is what Jesus knew as he stepped out of the cave. It is what the Jews and Moses and Aaron and all of them knew as they got to the other side of the Red Sea. It is what Buddha knew under the tree. It is simply the truth that all the mystics have taught. Thou art that. And no matter who says what about you, no matter how people react to you being your Christed self, you recognizing your oneness with all beings, including what you thought was a separate divine being, all of that is you. And all of that is a powerful healing force in the world. If you could live like this all the time, and you can, if you choose to live from this place of Christedness, people will walk next to you and be healed and never know why. People will come to you and say, what is it you've got? I want that. I want to live like that. You live from joy. You live from power. You live from peace. I want that. And that is what we do here at the Center for Spiritual Living. That is what we teach here at the Center for Spiritual Living. That is what we celebrate here. And so if you want that sense of power and peace and perfection, then you are welcome here. You'd be welcome even if you didn't want it. But if that's what you're looking for, then we have a version of it that we can teach you. It's not the only version. We use lots of different tools, and all I'm going to do, I'm sorry, hold on. Sorry, dude. I love you to bits, but it's time for me to be free of this. So much for the new sweater. Cats never forgot that they were worshipped as gods, and they expect it still. So, you know what? The truth is what was said by Hazel. We choose love. Why? Because love chooses us. Because we are love, and we choose this way of being in the world. And this being so, one of the powerful tools that I like to use is prayer. And so we go into prayer now, knowing its perfection. Now, when I say prayer, I don't mean we're going to beg something outside of ourselves to fix things. There's nothing to be fixed. It's already all perfect. I ask you to join me in consciousness and take these words for yourself if they feel right to you. And now I close my eyes, and you are welcome to do so as well. I close my outer eyes that I may see with the spiritual eye, the one eye. We are told in the Christian Gospels that if thine eye be single, thy body will be filled with light, the light of truth, the light that we call God. Looking with this one single spiritual eye, what I see is the divine being that is pure and perfect peace, that is freedom from all discord, that is freedom from any sense of lack or limitation. It is the ultimate freedom to be. Not just freedom from, but freedom to. The divine being is one of peace, is one of perfect love that is not dependent on any particular activity or name or set of rituals. It simply is, and it permeates this physical world we live in. It is the life within every single cell of every single being that is or has ever been. It is what makes electrons blink in and out of existence. It is what holds atoms and mountain ranges together. It tells us when to ascend, just as it tells babies to be born and flowers to blossom. And in this moment, there is no part of me that claims separation from that. There is only oneness. There is only power. There is only peace. And I speak this word on behalf of all sentient beings everywhere and every when. Because all beings are living in the light right now. All beings are part of that infinite life itself right now. And so as I speak my word on behalf of all beings, I release everything that looks like oldness. Release everything that looks like the darkness of the tomb or the fear of being persecuted. I release everything that looks like untruth, anything that looks unlike the divine being, and stand firmly in the truth, capital T truth, that we are one with the divine, and therefore we are one with prosperity. We are one with wholeness that looks like physical health. We are one with joy. We are one with good. We are one with good however we choose to define it. And I bless this truth as it has always been true. I stand witness to it, and by the power of my word, using the natural laws of cause and effect, I speak this word into being. I know that as I release this word into the law, as I stand witness to the capital T truth, it must now take form. It is as natural as the sunrise. It is as required as following the laws of gravity or physics, quantum physics, which we may or may not understand. We may or may not understand the how. It doesn't really matter. And so I bless and celebrate this good. I bless and celebrate the love. I bless and celebrate this life right here, right now, in, through, as, and for all of us. And I simply allow it all to be. And so it is.